Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first vChapter meeting of the year. Happy New Year to everyone. We're so glad that you could join us this year. And also a big happy birthday to us. We've made it 1 year. This is our second year of the vChapter, and we're just so excited that we've had a great start. And the board has been busy planning a whole bunch of events coming up this year. Let me introduce myself. I'm Christy Trice. I'm the vChapter president. And then let me introduce the rest of the board. So we have Carol, who's the VP of Programs. We have Cindy, our VP of Communications. We have Jason, who's our VP of Membership. Mike, who's our Webmaster and Marketing VP. And then we have Ricardo, who's our Vendor Liaison. So we all want to welcome you, and we're going to go ahead and get started right away with our program. Mike Messina is going to be our host for today. Welcome, Mike, and thank you.
Thank you, Christy, and welcome, everybody. Again, my name is Mike Messina, and I am very happy to be hosting today's call. We're very excited that each of you has decided to take time out of your busy schedule to join us today for our first meeting of the year. Of course, this is 2014, and we're all looking at ways to improve ourselves and our organizations, and we're really excited to be able to present to you a great meeting today that hopefully will do just that. So just a quick run through of what we have on store today. We do, of course, want to recognize our sponsor for today's meeting, which is Cherwell Software. Of course, we would not be able to do the meeting today without them, so definitely appreciate your sponsorship. And, of course, everyone is aware of today's meeting topic, hosted by Roy Atkinson, called Metrics of the New World of Support. Of course, we're going to have some great networking and some great collaboration and just conversation. We've already started a lot of that in the group chat, so looking forward to a great meeting. So just a couple of quick housekeeping items before we jump in. First of all, in the lounge theater, you can actually click on the double little bubble icon to be able to go back to the group chat if you want to continue to chat while you're on the call, and be able to see who else is on the call with you as well. Of course, HDI has been doing collaboration and virtual meeting together for quite some time, and we continue to improve what we're doing as a community. HDI Connect is a great way to do that, and if you haven't checked that out, I definitely encourage you to do so. There's some great content, some great information to be able to learn through that experience. Okay, I just heard that it looks like there might be some various audio issues. If you are having issues during the call, you go ahead and click on the help icon up on the upper right. And can anybody hear me at all?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Stephanie.
Also.
Okay, looks like a lot of folks in the chat are mentioning some audio concerns. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but I'm going to continue on with the slides, and hopefully we can get that fixed in the background. But if you are having issues...
Mike, it looks like we're getting a lot of people who can hear, and there's a few who can't. Just a reminder, make sure that you're using this through your computer. So if you have your speakers muted or something, you may want to check that. So I think we can probably go ahead and continue.
Okay, perfect. We also, of course, have a LinkedIn group through HDI as well. I know a lot of folks are using LinkedIn these days. And for anyone that's on Twitter, of course, you can always tweet using the hashtag ThinkHDI. And even during today's call, if there's a particular point of interest or anything that strikes you, I know that we'd be happy to see some great Twitter activity. Go ahead and use that hashtag ThinkHDI for anything that comes to mind. Okay, as I already mentioned, we do have a help icon, so if you do run into any technical issues, please click on that, and all of us should be well-versed in dealing with technical issues. Of course, there's also the ability to ask a question during the presentation, and we will be fielding questions at the end of the call. You can simply type your question in at the bottom, and we'll be gathering those questions and sharing some of them at the end. Okay, one question that I wanted to throw out there as a polling question for us to share about is how would you classify most of your current metrics? Are they operational? Are they tactical? Or are they strategic? Go ahead and take a minute, fill out the polling question, and this will really give us some great insight as Roy does his presentation today on really what types of metrics are valuable out in the marketplace. You know, I think we all are very well versed in metrics. We all obviously are familiar with our own metrics or even other organizations that we're a part of metrics. And this is an interesting question because it really gives us some something to think about. There's obviously different types of metrics, and it looks like operational is the landslide winner as of right now, but we'll go ahead and click to the results here. And as you can see, 85% of you selected operational metrics as the type of metrics you selected. There's a few that selected tactical at 11% and strategic at 4%. That's really interesting. For those that selected strategic, I'm curious, maybe you can add a note in the chat room as to what you're classifying as a strategic metric that you're looking at. And that'll be some good chat dialogue as well. All right, moving on. Of course, as I mentioned before, we have a great presentation today from Roy Atkinson. This is a little quote that Roy has shared. And the topic of today's presentation is, of course, metrics for the new world of support. You know, it's very true that we all need to consider operational, tactical, and strategic metrics, but we really need to make sure that we're looking at them through the proper lens. So hopefully we'll be able to learn more about that today. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Stephanie Santos from Cherwell Software, and she's going to be giving us a few items of interest from what Cherwell has to offer. Take it away, Stephanie.
Thanks, Mike. Hey, just so you guys know, Cherwell is a huge supporter of HDI, and I in particular. In fact, I used to work for HDI from 2004 to 2009, so it definitely has a special place in my heart, and I'm glad that they're putting together these webcasts and that the virtual chapter has been around for a while now, for a year, so congratulations on that. So if you've ever attended an HDI annual conference, whoops, I forgot to advance my slide. There we go. Or Fusion, you've probably seen us there. Maybe with Ron Munns, the founder of HDI, as some of you know. He's a very active member of our board and one of the first investors in the company when it was founded in 2004. In 2012, we were the youngest company on the Gartner ITSM Magic Quadrant, if you guys are looking at that. Essentially placing third in execution, which we thought was pretty spectacular, kind of tying with IBM. So that was a pretty big name to be associated with or to tie with. But one of the things that that makes Cherwell really different in the space is that we're still privately owned, and we've been profitable since our first sale, and that was in 2007. Basically, if we don't have the money, we don't spend it, and that has really been the philosophy of Vance Brown, the CEO. He calls it focusing on the customers by not being tied to VC funding and such. So by putting first things first, we get second things in return. I think he stole that from oh, I'm drawing a blank. But so by focusing on doing what's right for the customers, then the second things come or the money comes. So that's kind of been our operating philosophy. So we know that you have a lot of choices in your ITSM tools. I don't know if you know William Goddard, but he's pretty hard to miss. As some of you know, he's been around the space for quite a bit, and he once told me that there are about 200 ITSM tools in the market. Most of them I've never even heard of. So Cherwell Service Management is our flagship product. It's not a particularly creative name, I know, but at least it's easy to remember. We kind of like to keep it simple. And speaking of keeping it simple, one of the things that differentiates us is yes, it really is truly codeless. I am not a particularly tech-savvy person, but I was able to create a dashboard even just using the WYSIWYG and the drag and drop functionality, so that's kind of cool. Another thing is that one of the bullets there, 1, 2, 3, 4 down, it's one-step actions or one-step micro workflows. Those are basically macros in Excel that you're probably familiar with. Basically, they allow you to automate repetitive tasks. So if you, for example, have to reset a password, with one click, you can reset a password, close a ticket, and send the customer a survey. That's pretty useful for a lot of folks. And for those of you who are ITIL shops, we do have 11 pink verified ITIL processes, and those are ITIL 2011 processes. And best of all, you get it all for one price. You can also access Cherwell Service Management just about any way you want. We have a native iOS app, and this spring we're coming up with a native Android app as well, so look for that. We also have a few customers around the world here. In the UK, there's Munich Airport, Bailey Gifford. In the US, you see EPA, Chesapeake Energy, TomTom. Okay, and lastly, we sometimes say here we don't care, and what we mean by that is we don't care where you host our services. It can be at your site at Cherwell or the third-party data center. It all uses the same code base. So whether you have Cherwell on-premises or hosted, you can switch back and forth within a day. And you can purchase or subscribe. It's all good with us. You'll still get the same white glove service. So that's about it. Mike?
All right. Thank you very much, Stephanie.
Okay.
And on to our presentation. But before we do that, we wanted to cover a little bit of quick HDI vChapter business. This is just a quick list of what we're going to talk about here during this time. So the first thing I wanted to mention here and give a quick recap for anyone that was not able to make it to our December vChapter awards meeting. This is always something that I personally find very rewarding and just a really nice event. Is the Analyst of the Year and Desktop Support Technician of the Year. And of course, us being our first chapter, we jumped on board and we were able to have our first awards ceremony this past year in December. It was a really great event for anyone who was there. And I did want to especially congratulate our two winners. From the Desktop Support Technician side, I wanted to congratulate Barney Bryant. Of course, Barney was a really interesting guy during the call. He was very energetic, and you can obviously see why he was nominated for the award. So congratulations, Barney. And a little bit closer to home, one of my own technicians that I nominated, Dan Flowers, was awarded the Analyst of the Year award for the vChapter. He was completely blown away and very ecstatic about the award, and definitely appreciative for all the folks that voted for him. But it was a really great event for anyone that wasn't able to make it or didn't even know that we did this. This is our first year of many to come, and we're excited. If you're interested in this, well, I'm sure we'll have more details coming later in the year. Also, while we're in the meeting here, one thing I wanted to throw out there, we're going to talk a little bit about conference coming up, is are you planning to come to the conference, the HDI annual conference in Orlando, April 1st through the 4th? If you are, please take a minute or so and put your company name in the chat window. We'd love to connect with you. One thing we're planning on doing is actually reserving a table at lunch and being able to have some time during one of the days that folks that are aware of or involved in the local the vChapter rather, to be able to connect with each other. So if you are planning on coming, please let us know so we can be looking out for you. Of course, the chat transcript is saved, So this is a great opportunity. You can download the chat transcript at the end and be able to connect with other folks that you may have interacted with during these meetings. So please take a minute and let us know. All right. Okay, and of course, for anyone that has not gone to conference, it's an incredible time, very uplifting and very informational and educational. A lot of great information that you can learn and just a lot of great relationships that you can gain as well. Of course, the theme this year is Come Together, so please let us know if you're going to be coming. Okay, one pertinent piece of information regarding conference is that we do have an early bird discount that will be expiring this Friday, January 24th. So there's lots of discounts available for alumni discount, member discount, but the early bird discount does expire on January 24th. So you haven't registered, you can save yourself a couple $100. That's always a good thing. And if you're already planning on coming anyway, you might as well register to save yourself a little cash. Okay, a couple other additional items from the HDI corporate perspective. There are, we actually have a new membership now available for HDI corporate membership. This is great for medium to large organizations with 25 or more support staff. So if you're in that category, there's some information. You can contact your HDI account manager, and they can give you some more details on the pricing of that. But it's a great way, especially if you've got multiple folks that are taking advantage of the HDI membership within your organization. And then, of course, there is also for anyone that is not a member of HDI, you can actually become a member for only $75. So if you're interested in doing so, there's some great benefits. Of course, you can attend the vChapter meetings. You can attend the other webcasts that HDI presents. You'll be able to receive a digital copy of the Support World magazine, as well as many other things, accessing the job boards, etc. There's a lot of great benefits of being an HDI member, and just a great community to be a part of as well. Okay, we also have our HDI Forum Roundtables, and they're a great opportunity to network and learn and grow. I'm sure we've got some folks here on the call that are or have been a part of a roundtable. They're a really great way to really dig in deeper into a specific vertical and even into other areas as well. So it's a great way to really get some great networking with other peers that are in similar industries or even similar roles as yourself. And for anyone that is on the desktop support side or anyone just interested in desktop support metrics, of course we are starting to gather those metrics as of right now. You can put your results in. We have a survey that will be closing on February the 7th. If you'd like to participate in that, there's a link on this page, thinkhdi.com/research. So please check that out if you're interested, and it'll give us some great information. Of course, if you do fill out the survey, then you do get an email with a digital copy of it as well. Okay, now just a quick reminder for anyone that's not aware, we do have our HDI vChapter website that is up. We recently have made some changes, and it's kind of a work in progress. We're always making little edits to it. But one of the things we recently added was an events link at the top. So you can click on that. You can see all of the various events that we have scheduled for the year. And many of these events you can actually click on the link that will send you to the registration page right on this one page. So if you're interested in staying connected with the vChapter, this is a great way. This is a great place to do that. And we've tried to make it easy by including all the information in one central place. Of course, HDI is always looking for looking at new content that they can present. There's a lot of great information on the thinkhdI.com website. So if any of these particular topics are things that you're interested in, please check them out. Okay. Now, if anyone has any questions about any of the various HDI services, please put it in the Ask a Question field. It's a great opportunity. We'll have there's actually folks from the HDI staff that are online monitoring those questions, and we'll be happy to get you any information that you need or any questions that you have answered, and we'll be able to set you straight. Okay, now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you our featured presenter today, Roy Atkinson. I personally met Roy several years ago at an HDI local chapter officers meeting, and one of the things that they said about Roy, and it's very true, is Roy is very active in the social realm and is very active in the local chapter officer realm. He's been around HDI for quite some time. Many of you who are active on Twitter have, I'm sure, come across him. I'm sure that you've stumbled upon him. If you're at all interested in any topic related to customer service or metrics or HDI or anything of the sort, he's involved in the HDI Desktop Support Advisory Board. He's also a member of the HDI International Certification Standards Committee. And for anyone that has been to conference, I'm sure that you've seen Roy's speeches and presentations. So we are certainly in for a treat today. So without further ado, I introduce to you Roy Atkinson.
Thank you very much, Mike, for that kind introduction. It's great to be here, kicking off the year for the vChapter, and it seems like the vChapter is really, really doing well, so it's great to hear that. I'm going to start off with a couple of quotes here, and I'll just give you a chance to read through that, and I'm sure that you will recognize the fact that this is true. Most of the metrics that you have are ones that focus on the operations of the support center. As a matter of fact, in the poll that we took before we started today, 84% responded that their metrics are operational, 11 or 12% tactical, and only 4% strategic. So we're going to talk more about what each of those means, but one of the things that I really want to say is that the important words in this statement here from Tim Montgomery are the customer standpoint and value. I'm going to talk repeatedly about those today. And then the other quote is, things that are easily measured very rarely get us to what we really want. And that's from an interview that Cinda Daly did with Steve Holtquist that came out in Support World. And that I've heard elsewhere many, many times. And if you think about it, when you start talking about metrics that are aimed at showing value to business, it's not easy. They're not the things that come automatically out of ACDs or necessarily that your ticket system has built in, not canned reports. So we're going to talk about some of the things that might get you to think in a different way. I'm not going to go through a big long laundry list of metrics today, but I'm going to talk in detail about a couple that I feel are really important to change or to start looking at. And what I'd really like to have you walk away with is a sense of looking in the proper direction, not just looking internally at the kind of operational statistics that you gather every month or every week or every quarter, but looking up and making them more strategic. So what is this new world of support that I'm talking about? I talked about it in my last white paper, and I'm talking about it again today. I believe that support has entered another stage, and the reason it's there is simply because that business conditions have changed. The world changed to a certain extent in 2009 with the big downturn, and in addition to that, new disruptive technologies have come in over the last couple of years, that have changed businesses' ability to do things. It was not possible a few years ago to just dial up 100 servers from Amazon's web virtualization system. But now you can do that. You can pay a credit card and dial up a whole bunch of servers. It's really easy to do that. So there's changing business conditions, and that causes increased pressure on support to show its value. And the availability of what, I have an asterisk there for a reason, easy cost-saving alternatives. Outsourcing, managed services, spinning up servers out of the cloud, all of those things that can happen today are not necessarily easy and not necessarily cost-saving. It depends on what your organization needs to accomplish. But that's the way a lot of people think about them. They're easy and they're going to save us money, so let's just dial them up. And that's not necessarily the case. But on the other hand, you need to be able to show that your support center is worth the cost, because it is costly. It costs a lot of money to do. So maybe what you ought to start thinking about is, why do we have a support center? And just to give you a little bit of a sense of how this question can hit you, when I was doing some work with the Apple Consultants Network, I was out in Cupertino, California at Apple headquarters a couple of times, and one of the things that could happen in Cupertino, and did to a bunch of people, especially people who worked for Apple, was that if you happened to run across Steve Jobs in an elevator or at the lunch counter or anywhere in the hallway, he was very well known to look you right in the eye from close quarters and say, "What is it that you do for me?" And coming from a gentleman of that stature, you can imagine the intimidation factor involved. But why do we have a support center? If you can start thinking about that, and sure, things break and things have to get fixed, but beyond that, from a business standpoint, why do we have a support center? Why is it in-house, if it's in fact in-house? Or why are we paying money to an organization that does managed services or outsourcing? Why does it exist? And that's the kind of question that we need to start thinking about being able to answer. And maybe I can point you in a little bit in that direction today. From some research that HDI did just this past September, we discovered that there's a large proportion of IT organizations and support organizations that are really feeling the pressure from their businesses to show what their value is. What is your value to our organization? And a lot of times we use the term business, but it also overlaps into higher education and healthcare and all of those other things that we support. But there's a huge, huge preponderance of organizations that are feeling this kind of pressure to prove that they have real value and can help the business. So here are some of the things that tell us, some research that we've done that tells us what the priorities are for support center spending. And, the old saying, put your money where your mouth is. So these are not just items that we talk about. These are items where support centers are actually putting budget dollars in. And what are those priorities? Well, improving customer service has bubbled up to #2 spot this year. And reducing costs is all the way down to #5. It was #2 last year. So things have changed a little bit. Reducing costs has gone back to the level of 2011. And notice that the items are pretty much the same, just different orders. But one thing that stands out is that in all 3 of these years that we grabbed from our research, supporting business growth is the top thing. And part of that is because about 66% of support centers reported to us last year that the volume of tickets that they were processing had increased, and about the same number the year before, and about the same number the year before. That there's about 2/3 or a little bit more of support centers that report to us each year in the survey, going back quite a few years, that they're getting an increased number of tickets. And part of the reason for that, and the #1 reason in the 2013 survey, is that they have an increased number of customers, which means that businesses are growing, they're hiring people. If who are concerned with internal support, or they're getting more customers if they're doing external support. So supporting business growth, big priority. So who is the customer? And there's a couple of different definitions, and there's actually, I've seen some arguments in the IT service management world about this. The ITIL definition is one who buys goods or services or agrees with service level targets. That's the strict ITIL definition. So basically that means the manager of the business unit that signs off on your SLA. All right? Also, the casual definition of a customer is somebody you have to deal with. And the ITIL definition also makes provision for that too. It says that, in customer-focused organizations, it's the people that do business with you and that have transactions with you. So think of your customers in the formal sense as your business customer, whether that's an individual business unit, or you consider your customer with maybe a capital C as your business as a whole organization. That's your customer, is the business or university or hospital or medical center that you work for. That's your customer. And then individual transactions happen with individuals that make up that organization. No organization is monolithic. It's made up of people, right? So those are your customers. And we're going to talk quite a bit about customers today. So who pays for our goods and services? Going back to that ITIL definition. The customer is one who buys our goods and services. So who is that? Well, if we do internal support, it's our business or institution. If we're doing external support, it's our business's customers, the people who buy their goods and services, right? And even if it's free, they're still paying for it. It's built into the fees and costs that they have to pay to support the support center. So now let's take a step inside the door. That we've established a little bit who the customer is that we'll be talking about today. And think about what the CEO cares about. And probably the CEO doesn't care how many times you answered the phone last month. So things like ticket volume, call volume aren't going to matter very much to your chief executive unless, of course, you work for an organization that provides service desk or help desk services, in which case the CEO may very well care about the number of times you answered the phone last month. But in general, as far as a business organization or university, the CEO doesn't care how many times you answered the phone, but does care a lot about how much money IT costs and whether it's stable, useful, and effective, right? And being stable, useful, and effective enables the business to move forward and to have better outcomes, to better serve its customers. If that IT is constantly failing, or if there's problematic applications involved, and there's a lot of support required to keep it running, it's not stable, useful, and effective, and the outcomes are probably not going to be very good. If you think about your own interactions with various and sundry pieces of software or different internet service providers or whatever, if they're not reliable, chances are you won't continue to use them. So the CEO cares about that stuff a lot. So how can we start to address that? Well, there's different levels of information that are needed, and as we mentioned earlier, some operational, some tactical, some strategic. At the operational level, you're looking at proof of execution. That's what your metrics are going to show. The phone rang 4,000 times. We answered it 4,000 times within a given period of time. We said we target 30 seconds for answering. We did that 99% of the time, or whatever your particular stats happen to be, and that's proof of execution. At the technical level, we're looking at requirements for success. What does it take for us to be successful? And at the strategic level, now we're looking at much more of a general business focus. How does the business move forward? What is the business process, or the working of the university or hospital, whatever it happens to be, that is going to move forward and expand its base. So we're generally down here running at the operational level. That's that 84% of you that responded that way. And when we think about operational, even tactical, to a great extent, is focused internally. It's focused on the support center itself. And that's very useful to show how we're doing what we're doing and how many staff we need, all the operational and performance things that we need internally to run the support center. It's extremely important, and I don't want to diminish the importance of those types of metrics, but recognize them for what they are. They're not helping the business move forward, they're helping us run the support center. Okay, keep that in mind as we go. So operational, or what I call traditional metrics up there in the heading, things like volume, handle time, speed to answer, the wait queue, the hold time, abandon rate, agent utilization or analyst utilization, are needed to make operational plans and decisions. So these are all really important. There's a whole long list of them. If you want to know more of them, they're listed on the Think HDI website. There's under resources, there are some KPI guides and metrics guides you can download, and you can look at the definitions or the calculations for them if you're not sure about what they are. If you want to learn more about them, there's lots of information there to look at. But again, these are ones that are focused on the day-to-day operations of the support center. All important. Don't get us to that strategic level. So kicking it up a notch, and this is a quote from John Custy, who's an HDI faculty member, in a blog on HDI Connect, and you will be able to get this presentation from the resources folder in the theater and download it, and I believe that the links will be live, so you'll be able to go right to that blog post. And he talks about strategic metrics being reported to management, tactical metrics to the support center manager, and operational metrics are what the support center manager uses to understand what's going on. So same thing. It's operational, tactical, and strategic. So how do we get better information up the food chain? That's the question that I really would like to address today. And the answer is in starting to think in a more strategic way. You know what prairie dogging is, right? In a cubicle farm, it's poking your head up above the cubing, looking around you to see what else is going on in the organization. And that's kind of the paradigm I'm going for here. We need to pick our heads up above the cubicle, look outside, see what is the direction of the business, and figure out what we need to do in order to support that. So here are a couple of big ideas for you. Quantitative metrics is generally where we're focused. That's that operational level. It's how many times did we do something. And what I think we need to do is move more toward the qualitative side. And how many times did we is a fair question. But how well are we doing something is a much better question, I think. And what that takes is a relationship among different metrics. And again, if you think back to that first slide that I showed, it talked about that the easy things are not necessarily getting us to what we want. So you have to start thinking at the next level and start looking at the relationships among metrics and how they show how well we are doing things. I'm going to give you some big ideas on that. So we want to move from qualitative to qualitative, and from activities to outcomes. So moving from we resolve tickets, which is a fair statement for the support center, is it not? To we help produce business results. And that's a huge step. But there are some metrics that you can use to help you get across that chasm. We resolve tickets is a very simplistic way of putting it. I'm sure that most of you refer more to helping customers, but essentially what you're doing is resolving tickets, and what we want to show is how you're producing business results. So now we're up to the tactical level. So what are the requirements for success? Well, how many times do we resolve things within SLA? So we're meeting our customers' expectations there. How much effort was expended? What was our response time? And one thing that I really want to draw your attention to is repeated incidents. and something that I call same customer, same issue, or SCSI. Same customer, same issue. For example, I called the support center today because my internet connection broke at 1 o'clock. We're able to restart the machine. I got reconnected. Everything's fine. 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, guess what? My internet connection drops. I call the support center, restart the machine, and everything's back to fine again. So I've got the same issue. It's the same customer, same issue. And why is that happening? That's not within the support center's control usually, but it's a symptom of something that's going on. And so you might identify that as a problem if you're doing problem management in the ITIL sense. You might kick it over to your problem management folks and say, hey, what's going on here? This is more than one incident for the same customer. It's a problem. But it's interesting to note that repeated incidents are symptoms of something systemically wrong, or that the customer's not really getting the fix that they need. And that might be a symptom that somebody's shortcutting a solution or marking something resolved when it really isn't. So it's a good thing to watch from a tactical standpoint. And now let's move up to the strategic level. And here's where things get kind of tricky for support. It's tough to know what people want. What do they want to know? How do they want to know it? And how do they want that information presented? Is it a dashboard? Is it a set of tables? How is it exactly? And here's where you need to do that really, really scary thing. And the really scary thing is to have conversations with people. And if you don't have direct access to the top level executives, and I'm sure a lot of you don't, then it's probably a good thing to sit down and have a conversation with your management and your supervisors, whoever they are, to ask them to find out exactly how the leaders want things expressed. And even if they can't give you direct access, sometimes it may not be possible for you to report metrics directly all the way up the food chain to the senior level management, but you might suggest to your managers that if you were to produce metrics that might be of interest from a strategic standpoint, would you be so kind as to pass them along? Or you can even take it a step farther and produce those metrics and then hope that your management is going to say, wow, these are great. I'm going to pass them along. That's the best of all possible worlds, right? When they recognize something that you're doing as having really good value and passing them up the line. One of the ways that you can get more attention on the things that you're reporting is to put dollar signs in it. Okay, dollar signs mean a lot, but it has to kind of be the right kind of dollar sign. And one of the things that we report on and we focus on a lot is how much support costs. How much is the cost per ticket? And let me mention here, by the way, that cost per ticket is a moving target, and let me explain what I mean by that. Remember I said before that about 2/3 of support centers report that they are have an increased ticket volume this year over last year? Well, if the costs remain more or less the same across your organization, if your support center costs about as much to maintain this year as it did last year, and you're doing more tickets, what does that do to the cost per ticket? It drives the cost per ticket down. So it's a little bit of a moving target. It's not 100% representative of what's really going on. But start to think about how much did the support center save last month? Not how much did it undercut its budget or how much did it really cut its budget. How much money did it save business-wise for the organization? And wow, you think, how can we possibly do that? What are we doing that can help the business save money? And I'm going to try to show you a couple of things that you might be able to get your hands on pretty easily. But before I launch into that next section, I think I owe you a disclaimer. And so I will give you the TV disclaimer. Here it goes. The numbers, such as cost, volumes, and rates of the following slides, while within reasonable limits, are purely fictitious and should not be used as guidelines, averages, rules, or measures. Some settling of contents may have occurred during shipping and handling. Do not use before operating heavy machinery, professional driver on closed road. Do not use more than 30 minutes before or after eating. Drink plenty of water. Do not attempt at home. get appropriate amounts of sleep, and thinking about metrics may help with that, and always attend webcasts. Okay, whew. We got that clear. We can now move on. Now, the reason I went through that silly little disclaimer is that the numbers that are in this next section are, I made up the volume. I made up the ticket numbers, okay, but all of the numbers otherwise, the first call or contact resolution, the abandon rate, the handle time, all those numbers are within a reasonable throwing distance of what the industry averages are. Okay, so this shows if your organization had this many tickets and your cost per ticket was exactly the industry average, about what they would be. Okay, so I'm looking at this table, and I'm looking at the volume and the first call and first contact and the abandon rate and everything else, and it's a very nice looking table, but to tell you the truth, it kind of starts to give me dry eyeballs. So I'm not sure that that information is particularly valuable. Again, it's probably valuable to me as a support center manager. I want to know these things because they enable me to perhaps make an argument that I need more staff, or that I have my staff distributed at the right times of day, depending on what the volume is, etc. But not really valuable up the food chain. But I do, before we go on, I do want you to notice a couple of things in my fictitious organization here. I have cleverly contrived to reduce the ticket volume over the last quarter, October, November, December, and that will have some significant impact on some of the analysis that I'm going to do in a second. So that's just a bare bones table with a bunch of numbers in it, and I'm sure that I know I've spent some time making metrics reports that look like that and Excel spreadsheets, and maybe you have too. And maybe that's fine for your boss, but beyond that, probably not so much. People aren't going to want to look at it that way. So here we have a little bit of prettier table. It's still a table. It still has the same information in it, but we've added the money. And we've added across the bottom the change that's happened in this particular quarter. So between October and December, we've been able to reduce the total volume of contacts to the support center by 667. The total number of incidents reported has gone down. The total number of things classified as other has gone down. You see the red over there, 236. The service requests have gone up, but look at the cost. That puts the cost in real numbers. Now those are real costs. If you had that many tickets in a month, 12,688, at $17 per, which is the industry average as we know it, it's $215,000. So by getting a reduction in the total volume, and we wind up with $11,339 less cost this quarter, from change from October to December. That's a great thing to see that go down. It's still straight numbers, and as I say here, service requests, with the exception of password resets, are generally good. I want to talk about that just for a minute or two. So service requests have gone up, and why would that be a good thing? Well, incidents are when things break, and things breaking or being defective or having faults in them, not so much good. Service requests, on the other hand, are people asking us for either information or things that we need, that they need. I'm sorry, things that we have that they need. So somebody needs access to a particular system, they call in, we grant them access or provide the access for them. Somebody needs a question answered about how to use a particular application, or needs to get some software installed. That's a service request. That's all positive. People are coming into our store to buy stuff, to put it straight away. If, however, they're in our store, and let's say our store is like a supermarket, and in aisle 5 the jars of beets are on the top shelf, and they knock the jar of beets down and it splatters all over the aisle, something is broken. That's an incident. That's not so good. But if we provide the service that somebody can go and help to reach the jar of beets and give it to the customer who happens not to be able to reach that top shelf, then that's a good thing. So service requests are generally better than incidents. Broken, not broken. Password resets, not so good. Even though they're classified as service requests, or should be, with the exception of something breaking and locking people out. Generally, if somebody forgets their password, it's a service request. And that is not high value to reset a password. It's a huge amount of money every year that organizations spend on it, but it's not much value. So let's move on a little bit. This is a big deal from my standpoint. Impacted user minutes. Impacted user minutes is a very simple calculation. It's how long were users down, unable to use or restricted from use or partially able to use a particular application or a particular system or the network or whatever, and how many users that affected. You multiply the time times the number of users, and you wind up with the impacted user minutes. And this becomes extremely useful, and it becomes very high impact in terms of delivering metrics if you can get to the cost of downtime. Now, I don't have a tremendous amount of faith that many of you can get this far. This is kind of the holy grail here. But think about this. You can get that impacted user minutes if you can find out by working with your organization to find out the productivity per minute of the average person using your IT services and put a dollar value on that, then you can get to the cost of downtime. So let's say in the first example we had a 2-hour outage for 20 people at 2,400 impacted user minutes. If each one of those 20 users is producing a value of $5 per minute, let's say they're salespeople, and they make an average of $5 worth of sales a minute. Well, then the impact is $12,000. That's huge. Now, that's much more than the cost per ticket, isn't it? This is the cost, the real cost to your organization right here. It's much bigger than just the cost per ticket. That's your internal cost. This is the cost of the business. If you can get there, great. If you can't, bear in mind that that impacted user minutes is going to be an extremely useful metric, and I'll show that to you. Okay? If you can get mean time to resolve or mean time to restore service, either one of those will work. You can get how many impacted user minutes during a reporting period, because your ticketing system should show from open to resolve how long it took to resolve a particular issue or how long it took to restore service and how many people were impacted by that incident. If you can get those two things, then you can get impacted user minutes. So this is information you probably already have. It's not something you have to go digging for. You might have to write a special report to get it, or at least a formula to pull it all together for you. And if you can get to cost of downtime, super. If not, use that impacted user minutes. It's very important information. So here's the two side by side. And these, again, are based on our fictitious organization. I just took the number of tickets and said that an average of 20 people was affected by each one. That's probably pretty big, but it's the number that I used. And you can see the change over time, meaning that we reduced the impacted user minutes by 12,920 between October and December, that same time period. And just to give you an idea what that means, 12,920 minutes is 215 hours of productive work that were saved between October and December. Okay, just December over October, we were able to reduce that loss by that amount. And if you can get it in dollars, it's over $64,000. Now, let me point out at this point, if you haven't figured it out already, that reducing the number of incidents is probably not something that you can do from your seat in support. You need help. When things break, a lot of times they are things that are broken that are outside your direct control. They might be switches on the network. They might be applications that don't work right. They might be, new versions of Java that have been installed and released to the environment that don't work properly with the end users. I totally understand that, and this all revolves around communication between you and the escalation groups that you have. But if you can show this impact and this reduction in costs or increase in costs with for example, tickets that are escalated versus tickets that are resolved at the front line, see where I'm going here? You can demonstrate how much more it costs to get those things resolved and what happens when they don't get resolved in a timely fashion. How much real money it costs and how much downtime is involved. So that can be very helpful to you in terms of getting response times from your escalation groups, which I know is often an issue. And here's another case. Let's say there's been an initiative recently for you to get a self-service portal involved. And you've gone live with that, and you look at that over a period of time, and here you've seen a reduction in the number of tickets from, over 12,000 down to just about 12,000. You've seen a reduction in the number of incidents. At the same time, lo and behold, the number of uses of your self-service portal has gone up. Isn't that cool? That might be one case that you could make to say, hey, look how much value our self-service portal has. So start thinking of the metrics that you can gather that show good value to the organization. That's the whole key here. And they might be different from one organization to the next, depending on the kind of business you're in, the kind of services that you provide, the complexity of your organization, etc. Okay. And then we got to talk about customer satisfaction. We talked about the customer way back when, and customer satisfaction is the way that we measure that. And we know from our annual research and the Support Center Practices and Salary Report that more organizations are doing surveys on every ticket now. It's not uncommon at all to do a survey on every ticket. So, and Stephanie talked about that in her presentation, that with the Cherwell system, that's one of the things you can do. But what often gets forgotten is that we have to look at customer satisfaction from their standpoint, okay? These are three different ways to measure customer satisfaction. CSAT is the most common. How satisfied are you? Generally a rating between 1 and 5, 5 being very satisfied, 1 not so much, and about 4.5 or so is about the industry average. Net Promoter Score is another way. How likely are you to recommend our service to your friends and relatives? That you've probably taken surveys like that when you've gone to a particular store or gotten a product online or whatever. 0 to 6 are detractors that don't like you very much. 7 and 8 are passives that can take you or relieve you. 9 and 10 are promoters that will recommend you. And there's a formula for Net Promoter Score. You can look that up online. It's very easy to calculate. And I might mention that each one of these, by the way, has certain flaws. And some organizations are going so far as to use all three of them in conjunction. Be careful about killing your customers with survey kindness, however. The customer effort score is relatively new. It simply asks the question, how easy or how hard was it to get your issue resolved? 0, very easy, took no effort on my part. 5, very difficult. It took me a week, and I had to call 4 times, and I really hated the whole process. I don't know what it is with you people, etc. So be careful if you decide to add customer effort score or if you switch to customer effort score, because 5 is bad news in customer effort score as opposed to 5 being very good news in customer satisfaction. Whenever you change metrics of any kind, make sure that all the people that you report those metrics to understand what they're going to see after the change. Okay, very important. And that's just a case where the scores could certainly be misinterpreted. So another common thing is to make the satisfaction mistake. And there's a great blog on this point from Ray and Bruno. It's on HDI Connect. Again, there's a link right there in the slide. And the satisfaction mistake is to ask questions that we're interested in. Again, thinking internally and operationally, what am I interested in learning? Well, I'm interested in finding out if the support person was knowledgeable and professional. That might not be important to you as a customer. What might be more important to you is that they did it quickly. They found the resolution and they did it quickly, and you got your problem resolved and it didn't recur. So adding another row there on the right side to say how important is that to you is probably a really good thing, because then your answers can be weighted and measured against how important they are for the customers. So you're not putting emphasis on the wrong things when you do your customer satisfaction surveys. Right? So whenever you need to change your metrics, ask the right questions. What do we need to show? How are we going to show it? Right? Maybe we need to figure out what impact these outages that happen have on our users. So, okay, impacted user minutes would be a really good answer for that question. Decide on the metrics that will answer them, and then maybe several, and maybe relationships between them. And then you have to communicate and communicate and communicate and communicate some more. Make sure that the right people are getting your metrics reports. Make sure that you're aiming your metrics at the right level, be it operational, tactical, or strategic. And make sure that the folks understand the metrics that they're getting. And if you do that the right way, guess what? The CEO will pay attention. Look at how hard she's listening to you. Look at that. Unbelievable. Well, I'm sure you have some questions for me, so fire away. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Roy. That was a fantastic presentation. I know you've given us a lot of things to think about regarding what type of metrics we're currently doing and what type of metrics we should be doing within our organization. So if you haven't already done so, please add a question to the chat window. We'd love to try to field some of those as we're on the call here today. And a couple questions, go back actually, a couple questions that come up here. First of all, regarding the presentation, we will have it available for download afterwards, and a couple of other questions that came up as well. So Roy, how many metrics should you be showing? Is there a limit? And that question came from Matt Hartman.
Well, that's, again, that's one of those discussions that you have to have with your boss. You certainly don't want to bore them to death. There are organizations that report tremendous numbers of stats, and I'll tell you one extreme case that I'm aware of through a friend of mine who was doing some serious work on helping organizations identify and improve their metrics. And this particular organization, which is a very big organization, as will become clear in a second, had a team of 10 PhDs whose job it was to produce the reports every month of the metrics. And they had over 400 metrics that they were reporting. And when my friend left, they had reduced that to about 16 metrics that were key. And the answer to that is that when you produce a huge number of metrics, when you get all the information that you can out of everything, really what you have is a great deal of noise. But when you think about what people want to get at and what they need to get at by asking those correct questions, you'll find that the number is much lower. And when you start thinking about targeting outcomes versus activities, you'll be able to cut that down even more. Internally, there's probably going to be a large number of metrics that you want, maybe probably 20 or 30 key metrics that you're going to want to focus on that have everything to do with the volume, the speed of answer, the utilization rate, all of those things about staffing and performance. Are people in the seats? Are they doing their job? Are they resolving the tickets quickly? Are they escalating what they need to escalate? Are they putting accurate information in the tickets? Are they categorizing them correctly? So there's a bunch there. But above that, as soon as you get over that operational level, probably not so much. So just be talking with folks at the level above yours to make sure that you're not over-reporting. And you certainly don't want to under-report. You want to give them what they need, but probably not more than they need.
Excellent. There's a lot of questions we have in the chat, so we'll try to get through as many of them as we can. Question from Brad Kramer. This kind of information could lead to concern if there is no context for what caused the reduction. the normal hills and valleys of support could be affected by many things, many of which are not in the control of the desk. So more of a comment, but a good comment nonetheless.
Oh, that's absolutely true, and that's one of those things that I mentioned during the presentation, that the desk does not control a lot of what affects that. You can't control the number of incidents you're going to have. You can report the number of incidents you're going to have, but if you can give your management a better clue as to what happens when you escalate things, and then chances are that they're going to try to get those things fixed. And if you can demonstrate to them how much it really costs when some of these things happen, how much productivity gets lost. And I noticed a comment, by the way, from Jason about, yes, that's true. They may not be totally out of business, but let's say those folks who are impacted on a particular incident can't get to Salesforce. And that's what they do. They're salespeople. So they need their contact information and so forth. They're not being productive. So these are not carved in stone numbers, but you can get in a ballpark and demonstrate how much money it's costing in terms of productivity when people can't get their jobs done.
Excellent point. Another question here from Lane from the question and answer section. Any estimates of the average cost per customer minute?
I don't, and one of the reasons that I don't have that is because we haven't asked that question, and I think that that's something that we're going to be leaning toward over the next couple of years, is asking that type of question in our survey so that when we're reporting out to you, we can probably provide some of that information. It's going to vary widely by size of organization, by type of organization, but you can certainly ask that question. And I know some organizations that have nailed cost of downtime, at least for certain aspects of their operations, like one of the university service desks that is a member of HDI did a fairly extensive examination of what the cost of downtime was when people were locked out of their systems by forgetting their passwords. So you might want to even break it down by situations which takes them totally out of the equation, like network outages or getting locked out of their systems totally, or you can look at an average of how much money they produce per minute per day on average, and then say, okay, well, you were out of business for 20 minutes today, so that's how much it cost.
Okay. We have another question here from Michael Staunton. I wanted to know, for larger organizations, do you have any suggestions for achieving the cost per minute rate? What is the HR? What if HR isn't willing to share this information?
Well, and I would say that that's going to happen more often than not. You can ask for the information and negotiate with the information and try to convince people that it might be a really good stat for you to have. And if you can get somebody high up enough in the organization to listen to that, you might be able to get at it. But in general, I'm going to say that that is going to be a difficult stat for you to get. I'm not underplaying how hard it is, and that's why I say that you might not be able to get to that cost of downtime, but you can probably get to impacted user minutes and use that as your stat. If you can get the dollar signs in front of it, spectacular. If you can't, then impacted user minutes will tell the story.
Okay, excellent. Another question from Donna Johnson. She wanted to ask how to move customers to self-service avenues when they have easily picked up the phone and gotten their incident resolved, or moving customers to use self-service request forms without talking to our service desk personnel. We are struggling with this right now. I think that's a common struggle for a lot of organizations.
Self-service is really, really useful, and people will use it if their issue or problem is at a certain level. What we know from various studies over time is that the complexity of an issue drives the channel that they use to resolve it. So if I have a very simple question and you have a good, robust self-service system and allows me to go in and find the answer quickly, I will go back to that system and I'll use it again and again for simple answers. If I have a complex question about some problem that I've run into, or I want to perform a series of operations, or I need help configuring a certain application, then I'm going to want to pick up the phone and I'm going to want to talk to somebody. And part of the shift left philosophy is to move those more complex questions down to the front line so that they're equipped to answer them and save time so that they don't have to be escalated. But self-service needs to be, everybody says searchable, but searchable is one thing, findable is something else. You have to be able to find the correct information quickly using your own search terms. And there's an excellent article on the Think HDI website called What is LZS? You can search on that. What is LZS? Level 0 support. I'm sorry, Level 0 solvable. And that's written by Rick Joslin, and that will talk about when it's good to push your knowledge out to the end user and how to determine exactly what it is. There's a very simple process that he walks through to help you identify that.
Okay. Another question. We're getting a lot of questions in the group chat and in the Q&A forum. I'm going to try to stick to the Q&A, but I'll jump through a few of these group chat questions as well because they came in around the same time. This one from Roberta Brinkman. She asked, can you combine the CSAT and CES in the same survey? And I think you addressed that in your presentation. You can, but you have to be careful that it's not too much information, right?
Yeah, you absolutely can do that, and a lot of organizations are starting to add that customer effort score to their customer satisfaction survey. So you can ask your 4 or 5 customer satisfaction questions and then tack on the one at the bottom that says how easy or hard was it to resolve the issue. And the scores can be opposite ways, but be careful. Don't make it confusing for the end user either. That's a mistake that sometimes happens in surveying. If I'm used to taking surveys that have the low thing on the left, the bad response on the left and the good response on the right, and now you switch it and one question has the good response on the left and the bad response on the right, I'm going to have a much higher chance of putting the wrong answer in. So be very careful of how that's done. Make it very clear to the end user, or give them a star rating, 1 through 5. How hard was it? Oh, it was 5 stars, or it was 4 stars, or 4, icebergs, or however it is you want to do it.
Gotcha. Okay. Another question from the chat here. It says, bear with me a second. From Scott. He said, my costs are the same regardless. Actually, that's more of a comment, so I'll just skip that.
Yeah, actually, I saw that one go by, and I did have something to talk about that.
Before it.
Just your costs are the same no matter how many tickets you have. Right, that's exactly the point. Your costs, let's say it costs $17,000 a month to run your support center, and it's $17,000 this month and next month. But let's say that 2 months from now, with that same $17,000, you have twice as many tickets. That means that the cost per ticket has gone down because you're producing more tickets with the same amount of money. That's what I was referring to. That should probably clear it up for you.
Yep, outstanding. All right, another one here from the Q&A. We have from Michael Watson. He asks, hi there, how do you, do you have any recommendations for additional reference material to read, such as information on Think HDI or any other websites that talks about what metrics typically show value to IT director, VP of IT, etc.?
Well, there are a couple of white papers that actually were written in the last quarter that try to address that. There aren't many, and the reason I think is because these are difficult metrics that folks don't necessarily like to talk about. But by all means, download the white paper that goes along with this presentation. And there's also a research report called Show Me the Value in our white paper section on thinkhdi.com.
Okay. Another question from the group chat from Laura Flowers. she wants to know how to run metrics for smaller organizations where the help desk does not have an ACD in place.
That is a really tough question, and part of the answer might be manual. Depending on how many calls you get and how you're tracking things now. I don't know if you have a tracking system in place. Maybe that can help you. Even if you have rudimentary ticket tracking, you can probably get an idea of how many contacts you're getting and how long it takes you to get them resolved.
Okay. Now, just a reminder, we are going to continue to keep this open, keep the chat room open for 30 minutes after the call today. So if we don't answer your question from the group chat, we'll try to answer it after the meeting is over. So I'm going to try to cover as many of these Q&A questions as we can. The next one here is from Jim Keller. It says, business days and numbers of employees each month impact the number of calls. So that's just a comment, but a good one nonetheless. And then a question from Tom Lewis. As another way to gauge our internal customer satisfaction, we do an annual CSAT survey, including 5 to 6 questions where customers rate IT in different areas. Do you recommend this approach? Is 30% response rate at, above, or below average? Thanks.
Let me take the last part of that first, Tom. 30% is substantially above average response rates. Whether or not it's an adequate response rate given your user base, I would recommend that you use a calculator. There are several online statistical calculator, and just do a quick search on your trying to think of the term that you would want to search on now. Valid sample or statistically valid sample. If you do a search on that, you'll probably come back with 2 or 3 calculators that will tell you how much of a sample you need for your size organization. So it might be, if you have 30,000 end users, it might be you need to have 385 surveys in order to make it statistically valid.
Okay. Next one here, Didier. I'm going to mispronounce the last name, so Schweinberg. Hopefully I didn't kill it too bad there. Wants to know, how would you measure the operational metrics in the following environment? Number one, one supporter alone in an office of 90 users does not open tickets only for escalations, as he is doing an on-site survey, as well as call center, server operations, network operations, project, etc. What would you measure?
You would want to measure how many contacts you're getting, for sure, because there may come a time when you'll want to have 2 people instead of 1 person doing that job. You will probably want to measure at what levels those things get resolved. So if you're the 1 person in that role and you don't have the ability to restart the servers or restart the applications or whatever it is you need to do to resolve the issue, PDA, then I would suspect that you will want to get some stats on how often that happens and when it happens, and you can use a tool as simple as Excel or a free ticket tracking system. It doesn't have to be hugely complex, but you probably want to track as much as you can about what you are doing in each aspect of the operation that you do.
Okay. We're going to come back to these questions here in just a minute. I just want to finish the rest of the information here. This has really been an outstanding presentation, and obviously there's a lot of interest in this particular topic. I think all of us are looking for ways to improve our operations and looking for ways that we can prove that we're improving things. There are going to be some resources available after this meeting. In the resource folder, you'll be able to download Roy's presentation as well as the Cherwell presentation from today. Additionally, for anyone that is interested in continuing this conversation further, we are going to be having a follow-up conversation to really talk through the more specific details of how we can make this work practically within our organizations. And Roy has graciously offered to join us for that call. We're going to try to make it a little bit more collaborative in nature and try something new for the vChapter. So we're excited to try that out. If you are interested, there's more details available on the vChapter website. You can register for that event and check it out. While we're talking about that event coming up, please let us know if you think that you'll be able to make it to that event. We just want to try to get a rough idea of how many folks are going to be there. It is only a couple weeks away, so it's kind of a short turnaround time. But if you are interested, we'd love to have you, and it'd be great to dig in further to this topic. All right, so far we've got 64%. Let me go back here, and we'll leave the slide up for a little bit longer. And we can go through a few more questions, and then I've got actually we'll go through one or two more questions, and then I've got a couple of slides at the end. So we'll leave this one up in the meantime for folks to ask anything additional. Bear with me here. Okay. We've got so many questions, I've lost my place. Let's see. Tom Lewis wanted to know, we record a front-end message when we experience an outage. So we don't know exactly how many people called to report an issue and hung up. How do we know the number of users impacted? We can't use the entire population because many users may not have been using that application that broke at the moment. So that is a difficult scenario, and I think a lot of organizations use proactive measures to avoid calls, so that's a tough one.
It is a tough one, and there's really no way to know in a lot of cases, especially when you're providing external support. There's no way to know of the great universe, the expansive number of customers that you have, how many might be impacted by a certain thing until you get those calls. And that's one of the reasons that a support center is valuable. And don't forget this, that it provides a modicum of business intelligence to your organization. It's the guy with the binoculars in the crow's nest, wasn't paying attention when the Titanic was out there, saw the iceberg way too late, but kind of that first response, that early warning system, that something in the environment might be wrong. In that case, you absolutely can't begin to estimate. You can only do it after the fact and look backwards and say, okay, we got this number of calls, but from that you might be able to extrapolate that a certain percentage of your population was down for a certain period of time. It's not going to work in every environment. And let me expand on that. Almost no metrics are going to be good metrics for every environment, and that's why I said think about what your organization needs to know and try to ask the appropriate questions for your organization. Okay? External ones are a little different, and that's a case in point.
All right. Let me actually go back a little bit here. It looks like we're going to have a good turnout for our upcoming meeting, so thank you, everyone, for letting us know if you're going to be able to join that here. So we're very excited about that. Additionally, we've got some other meetings that are planned as well. February 18th, we've got an HDI webcast that's going to be talking about mobile support. On March 18th, we're going to be having an HDI Buyer's Guide meeting, and then the next vChapter webcast is going to be April the 15th, talking about problem management. And we're having Buff Scott, the co-author of the new HDI Problem Management Professional Certification, who's going to be leading us in that particular class. So we're very excited about that. We've probably got enough time for one or two more questions. I'll just leave it on this last closing slide for anyone that does need to drop off early. We really appreciate everyone joining for today's call, and look forward to chatting with you further for those who are able to stay on the line in the chat room. Again, thank you, Roy, for a great presentation. We'll try to cover a couple more questions as we have time, and then for anyone else who wants to stay on board, please continue to chat away, and we'll answer a few questions there as well. This question comes from Jason Saunders. I believe he asked this in the chat room as well. He said, how do you validate that the IUM is actually downtime versus maybe a performance hit, or they just do something else? Is there a loading factor that should be applied?
There can be, and what generally is considered to be that downtime is their primary activity. So, as I said before, if they're salespeople and they use Salesforce and they can't get access to Salesforce, that's their primary activity. That's their primary tool that they use. If there's a network outage, for example, and let's stick with salespeople because that's kind of an easy case to see. If there's a network outage, well, if they're using VoIP phones, those phones are down, and they can't get to Salesforce. So they're pretty much out of business. So if it's their primary activity, then downtime is a pretty clean metric there, or impacted user minutes, depending on which one you're going to be able to get. If, on the other hand, we're talking about email being out and they're salespeople who primarily use the phone and Salesforce, their activities might be impaired, but they might not be completely down. So you might want to say, if $20 per minute, let's say, in your organization is the cost of downtime, if you can get there, and if they have an impairment of sorts, then you might want to assign a number to that and say, it's a $10 downtime or it's a $5 downtime. It took some of their functionality away, but not all.
Excellent. All right, Jeff London wants to know, do you have any tips on getting a representative average handle time if your agents handle multiple simultaneous incidents, a chat and an email, or multiple emails?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a tough one, and that's an issue with some multi-channel things. It becomes very hard when you have people doing multiple things at the same time to try to get a clean idea of how long it takes. What I might suggest, if it's possible, is to have a little pilot group run a test and say, okay, for 2 hours today, you folks are only going to do chats. And for 2 hours today, you folks over here on the other side of the room are only going to do emails. And see how long it takes them to resolve things, look at how long it takes the people who are on the chat to resolve things, and use those as kind of a test case to give you a ballpark bit of information about how long it actually takes. And then you can see how that affects everybody. When you put the mix back together again and have people doing both, you'll at least have kind of a baseline number you can assign to each channel.
All right, outstanding. Another question here from Didier. I'm not sure if they're still on the call. It says, please can you please repeat the link to the level 0 solvable related self-service?
Oh, sure. Let me see if I'll put the link right in the group chat.
Great.
I'll hunt that down for you.
Okay.
And I will just put the link right in the group chat.
Looks like Dan may have beat you to the punch. Dan Ainsworth? Thanks, Dan.
It figures. Thanks, Dan.
All right, another question here from Jason Saunders. I believe Roy alluded to circling back to passwords when he was discussing self-service earlier. Does he remember what he was going to cover?
Passwords, service requests, and one of the things that I mentioned was that they're non-productive, they're non-value producing when you're resetting passwords. There's two things to keep in mind, and I think what I might have alluded to was that I could elaborate on why they're usually service requests, but not always service requests. If something breaks and locks users out or something like that, it's an incident because something broke. If, on the other hand, I forget my password and need to call you, it is a service request. And but it is still a non-value producing service request. It doesn't demonstrate value. It's just thanks for being there to reset my password. I appreciate that.
All right. Outstanding. Well, thanks again, Roy. Please continue to chat away. For anyone that we didn't answer your question, we do apologize. We definitely had a lot of great questions to get to today. If you're still on the call and interested in getting an answer, please either join us on our February call. We'll be happy to dig in and answer your question there, as well as you can add it to the group chat if you'd like. So again, I just want to thank everyone for joining us on our call today, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.